before hair extension installation, during hair extension installation, and after hair extension installation. I was able to completely transform my hair with these Life hair extensions, so let's get into it. I am so excited. Let's install these Life Microlink hair extensions together today. This is in the shade 1622. They are 22-inch human hair extensions. The color match is perfection. And the reason why I love the Microlink so much is because with these extensions, you get a 360 rotation. To me, they are the most natural wear. And when installed properly, there is virtually zero damage to your natural hair. So in this bundle, there are 50 pieces and it's 50 grams. The quality of the hair is amazing. Now, normally when installing iTip hair extensions, everything comes separate. These are amazing because it literally comes all in one. The loop tool is attached to the hair extension, which is secured through the bead. So let's get to installing. So I'm going in with very clean partings and sectioning. I'm taking the natural hair and pulling it through the loop tool, as you can see. I'm making sure that the loop tool is as high and close to my root as possible. I'm then grabbing the base of the loop tool and sliding the extension upward over the natural hair and pulling it through the center of the extension. I'm then sliding the extension down ever so slightly and using my hair pliers to secure the bead as tightly as I can. So now moving on to my second piece, which will be directly next to the first one. I'm leaving no space in between extensions because I want to make sure that we pack them in and fill the row to the maximum density. And here I will show you the entirety of how I built row 1. Right there I checked to make sure that I wasn't going too superficially because you want to make sure that there is room on each side of the row so that when you pull your hair up, you do not see the extensions. Because the Microlink extension comes all in one, I flew through this installation. I could not believe how quickly. I would say this cut down installation time by 50%. So now that we are done with row 1, we'll be moving on to row 2. And I'm leaving no space in between each extension in row 2. Every extension will be directly next to the one to the right or the left of it. The reason for that is because we want to pack these 2 rows so that we're able to build a really good foundation and as much density as we possibly can. Now, when I start getting to the rows above the ear, which will be in my next video, I do things a little bit differently and use a different technique. But for these 2 rows specifically, the goal is to install as many extensions as possible while still making sure that we're not going too superficial. If we go too superficial on the outsides of each row, when we try to tie our hair up or style our hair in any kind of way, the extensions will show through. So we want to leave at least a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of hair out on the outer ends of each row. Now, with regards to spacing between row 1 and row 2, there is only about 1/4 inch of hair in between. Because we are placing the extensions on the occipital area in rows 1 and 2, there's going to be a natural slope which will allow the extensions to fall in a natural position off the head, so you won't get any bumps. You won't really see instances where these extensions kind of pop out in weird directions because of the natural graduation of the head. Now you can see how little hair there actually is between rows 1 and 2 because right now row 1 is actually visible. And again, due to the natural slope of the scalp at this area, we are able to get away with a very thin spacing in between rows. However, it won't be the case as we make our way upward. Now, if you wanted, you can even do another row above this in the same way and same fashion as rows 1 and 2. I didn't feel like I needed a 3rd row for extra density, but if you have thicker hair and you feel more comfortable adding a 3rd row, I have done that many times in the past. And it does help to really thicken up the foundation by adding an additional row. Also, something to be aware of is that when you receive your extensions, they are treated, they are very straightened. So I generally like to try and wash my extensions before I install them. I didn't have a chance to do that here, but it just gives you a better idea of the fullness that you're actually building when they're not extremely straight. So it's easier to gauge how many extensions you actually need so you don't overpack your hair. But another huge factor in building a good foundation is making sure that your extensions are very high quality. Trust me, there's nothing more frustrating than installing a whole pack and then realizing they are extremely thin and that you're installing so many pieces, but you don't have the thickness that you should. So without doubt, I will share my biggest tip right now with regards to installation and making sure that they are placed in the right spots, but also comfortable at the same time. There is nothing worse than when you get a head full of extensions and you're uncomfortable. You want to avoid installing on the high points of the head. And what that means is avoiding installing rows on the most superficial parts of the scalp. So think of it in this way. When you're laying your head down on a pillow at night trying to go to bed, the spot on your head that hits the pillow most superficially is the area right above your ear, because simply put, it's the farthest point outward on the scalp. So we want to avoid installing any rows on that specific area. You can install below and you can install above, but just be sure to avoid the high points of the head. And with that, we will move on to rows 3, 4, and 5. Jumping right in, I'm starting as always in the center, taking an extremely clean section, free of flyaways, making sure that it's the thickness that we need it to be. If the section you're taking is too thin, the extension and the bead won't have enough hair to hold on to and they'll slide right off and your extensions will wind up falling out. We do not want that. The section has to be thick enough, but not too thick. Anything too thick is going to pop and create a bulge, which we want to desperately avoid. Speaking of popping and bulging, we want to make sure that the extension is laying flat at a 0 elevation. If it's not laying flat, what will happen is we'll be building bulk around the perimeter of the hair. It'll be giving us a helmet head moment, which we're trying to avoid. Now the parting for this row is in the shape of a U, which means it starts a little bit below my temple and swoops downward toward the back of the head. And then when you come back on the other side, it swoops back up to the temple. This is going to give us more surface area to pack in more extensions because this row is critical. And if you guys stuck along with me for parts 1 and 2, you know the deal. We are packing these extensions in as close as we possibly can. There is no space in between each extension. And I'm stopping an inch before I get to the front hairline. So I made my way to the other side and finished row 3, and here is a shot of row 4, and I want to explain. So for row 4, I switched to a bricklaying pattern, which means the row 4 extension is positioned to fall in between the row 3 extension installed directly underneath it. I like to do this because I find that it allows row 4 to be stacked as close on top of row 3 while still falling at a 0 elevation, creating no bulk, no popping. And I find such a small change like this makes this technique very successful. It's just a great little tip that I found to create thickness without adding any bulk. So I'm just making my way around the perimeter of row 4, continuing to work my way toward the hairline, and I did a mini row 5 on each side, and what I mean by that is as I got close to the front hairline, I took another very thin section. Right here is where you can see my sectioning, and I'm just adding a mini row on top of the existing row 4, just so that it helps build a little bit more thickness on the sides, which is very important. And for the very last step of this process, the haircut, I'm using my thinning shears and I'm point cutting because I do not want to make any harsh lines. And when I'm cutting my guide on the bottom, I like for it to be very soft. I'm using my regular hair cutting scissors to make my angles in the front and taking my time, because if you've stuck with me this whole time, you know that my favorite expression is you can always take more off, but you cannot put it back on. So I like to go really slow because cutting extensions is an art in and of itself. We have finally reached the end of this look. I hope you guys enjoyed this in-depth look on how to install these Microlink extensions. Please leave any thoughts, comments, and questions below. Thank you.